He forced his poor pregnant wife to farm under the scorching sun. What she dug up changed everything. The rusty shovel struck something hard beneath the cracked earth, and 23-year-old Mei Lin felt her water break at the exact same moment, sending her collapsing to her knees in the scorching field as a gleaming golden edge emerged from the soil beneath her trembling fingers. Her husband Chen Wei stood 50 feet away under the shade of their crumbling farmhouse porch, watching her with cold indifference, the same man who had sworn eternal love to her just 18 months ago now threatening to sell their unborn child to pay his gambling debts if she didn't finish plowing the 2-acre field by sundown. Mei Lin's sun-darkened skin glistened with sweat as she clutched her swollen belly, her faded blue cotton dress now stained with dirt and dampness, her cracked lips whispering desperate prayers while contractions began rippling through her exhausted body. She was 8 months pregnant, malnourished, and had been working since dawn under the brutal summer heat that had already claimed 2 elderly farmers in their small village this season. The mysterious object beneath her fingers pulsed with an almost warm energy, and somewhere deep in her heart, a question burned brighter than the merciless sun above: was this the miracle that would finally set her free, or simply another cruel trick of fate in a life that had shown her nothing but suffering? Chen Wei had not always been this monster. Mei Lin remembered their courtship 3 years ago in the neighboring village, when he had been a humble rice trader with gentle hands and softer words. He would bring her wildflowers picked from the mountain paths, recite poetry his grandmother had taught him, and promise her a life filled with comfort and children who would never know hunger. His medium build, weather-worn skin, and simple gray work clothes had represented honest labor to her hopeful young eyes. She had chosen him over wealthier suitors because his smile reached his eyes and his voice trembled when he spoke of his late mother. Her own parents had died in a flood when she was 17, leaving her an orphan working as a seamstress in a cramped shop, dreaming of belonging to someone again. The wedding had been modest but beautiful, held in the village temple with paper lanterns and borrowed silk. For 6 perfect months, Mei Lin believed she had found her forever home. Chen Wei worked hard, saved money, and spoke tenderly of the family they would build together. Then his childhood friend returned to the village, bringing with him cards, dice, and promises of easy fortune. The first gambling loss was small, easily recovered. The second required selling their wedding gifts. By the 3rd month of his addiction, Chen Wei had transformed into a stranger wearing her husband's face, his eyes hollow with desperation, his words sharp with blame he had no right to place on her innocent shoulders. When Mei Lin discovered she was pregnant, she wept with joy that quickly turned to terror. Chen Wei saw the child not as a blessing but as a burden, another mouth competing for the money he needed for his games. He began demanding she work longer hours, selling her embroidery for coins he would lose by midnight. When her pregnancy advanced and the seamstress shop could no longer accommodate her swelling frame, he put a shovel in her hands and pointed to the neglected field his father had left him. "Make it productive," he had snarled, "or I'll find someone who will." Now, as Mei Lin knelt in the dirt with life-changing pain radiating through her body and a mysterious golden object emerging from the earth, she understood that the next few moments would determine everything. She glanced at Chen Wei, who had noticed her collapse and was walking toward her with irritation rather than concern creasing his sharp features. His white sleeveless undershirt was crisp and clean while she labored like an animal. His leather sandals were unblemished by the soil that caked her bare, blistered feet. The contrast between them told the entire story of their broken marriage. "What's wrong now?" he called out, annoyance dripping from every syllable. "You've still got half the field left." Mei Lin's fingers worked frantically, scraping away dirt from the object even as another contraction stole her breath. The golden gleam expanded, revealing intricate carvings she had only seen in her grandmother's stories about ancient dynasties and buried treasures. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This could be nothing, a discarded ornament, a worthless replica. Or it could be everything: freedom, security, a future for her child that didn't involve being sold to strangers. "I said, what's wrong?" Chen Wei was closer now, his shadow falling over her hunched form. Mei Lin made a decision in that moment that would change 3 lives forever. She shifted her body, using her pregnant belly and dirt-covered dress to hide the golden object, and looked up at her husband with carefully constructed pain in her dark eyes. "The baby," she gasped. "Something's wrong with the baby." For just a fraction of a second, something human flickered across Chen Wei's hardened features. Then it vanished, replaced by calculating coldness. "Can you walk to the house?" "I need help," she whispered, and as he reached down to roughly pull her up, Mei Lin's fingers closed around the golden object, tucking it into the hidden pocket she had sewn into her dress for the few coins she managed to keep from his grasping hands. It was heavier than expected, solid and real, and warm against her thigh as Chen Wei half-dragged her toward the farmhouse. The village midwife arrived within the hour, a weathered woman named Aunt Shu who 70 years had witnessed countless births and twice as many sorrows. She took one look at Mei Lin's condition and ordered Chen Wei out of the small bedroom with a fierceness that brooked no argument. He retreated to the porch with a bottle, muttering about useless women and medical expenses. "Child," Aunt Shu said softly, pressing a cool cloth to Mei Lin's forehead, "your body is not ready." The baby was startled, but she's settling. "You need rest, water, and food. When did you last eat?" Mei Lin couldn't remember. "Yesterday morning, perhaps?" A handful of rice and some vegetable scraps Chen Wei had deemed unworthy of his own stomach. Aunt Shu's eyes darkened with understanding. She had delivered Mei Lin herself, 23 years ago, had watched this gentle girl grow into a hopeful woman, and had privately wept at her wedding when she recognized the subtle signs of future cruelty in Chen Wei's possessive grip. "The field," Mei Lin breathed. "Just now, when I collapsed." "What is it?" Aunt Shu was quiet for a long moment, her experienced eyes examining the medallion from every angle. When she finally spoke, her words emerged as barely a whisper. "This is the seal of the last empress's personal collection. It was lost during the revolution, along with her entire treasury. Scholars have searched for it for generations." She looked at Mei Lin with an expression the young woman had never seen before, not pity, not concern, but something closer to awe. "Child, if this is authentic, you're not holding a piece of gold. You're holding a key to a fortune that could feed 1,000 villages for 100 years. Mei Lin's hands flew to her belly as the baby kicked strongly, as if confirming the miracle. But immediately, cold fear washed over her hope. Chen Wei. If he discovered this treasure, he would gamble it away before sunrise. Every coin would vanish into the pockets of card sharks and dice runners while she and her baby starved. She could not let that happen. "Aunt Shu," Mei Lin gripped the old woman's hands with desperate strength, "he cannot know. You cannot tell him. Promise me." The midwife's eyes filled with tears as she looked at this broken young woman who should be glowing with pregnancy joy but instead burned with survival terror. "I promise," she said firmly. "But child, what will you do?" Mei Lin's gaze drifted to the window, beyond which she could hear Chen Wei's drunken humming. Her mind, sharpened by months of hardship, began to form a plan. "I need 3 days," she said quietly. "Can you give me 3 days?" Aunt Shu nodded slowly. "I'll tell him the baby is breech, that you cannot be moved or stressed, that he must leave you in my care." A grim smile crossed her weathered face. "Even he is not foolish enough to argue with medical complications. The whole village would turn against him if you lost the baby due to his negligence." For the first time in months, something that felt almost like hope flickered in Mei Lin's chest. She clutched the medallion tighter, feeling its ancient warmth seep into her work-worn palm, and made a silent promise to her unborn daughter. "I will give you a different life," she whispered against her belly. "I swear it on every star in the sky." Over the next 2 days, Mei Lin rested under Aunt Shu's watchful care while Chen Wei grew increasingly impatient on the other side of the thin walls. The midwife brought soup and bread, herbs and medicines, slowly nursing Mei Lin's depleted body back towards something resembling health. At night, when Chen Wei passed out from drink, Aunt Shu smuggled Mei Lin to the field under moonlight, where they carefully excavated the area around where the medallion had been found. What they discovered stole Mei Lin's breath entirely. Beneath 3 feet of packed earth, hidden by generations of farming and neglect, lay a stone chamber no larger than a closet. Inside, protected by oiled silk wrappings that had somehow survived decades of burial, was a collection that made the medallion look like a trinket. Jade combs that caught moonlight like frozen water. A golden headdress set with rubies the size of cherry pits. Scroll paintings on silk that depicted court scenes from dynasties past. And nestled in the center, a small leather journal filled with elegant characters that Aunt Shu recognized as the handwriting of the last empress herself. The midwife sat down heavily on the edge of the chamber, her old legs giving way beneath the weight of the discovery. The stories were true, she murmured. Before the revolution, when the imperial family knew they were doomed, they scattered their treasures across the country, hidden with trusted servants who were sworn to secrecy. Chen Wei's great-grandmother was a palace maid. The whole village always wondered why she chose this particular plot of land, why she insisted it remain in the family despite offers to buy it. Mei Lin lifted one of the jade combs with reverent fingers, watching it dance with inner light. She hid this for future generations. She wanted her descendants to find it, to be saved by it. Instead, she got Chen Wei. Aunt Shu's voice dripped with irony. A man who would have gambled away an empress's legacy before understanding what he held. Mei Lin carefully replaced the comb and looked at her dirty, calloused hands, the hands that had been forced to dig in this field as punishment, as humiliation, as proof of her worthlessness. Those same hands had just uncovered a fortune. The poetry of it was not lost on her. "We need to get this somewhere safe," she said firmly. "Somewhere he can never find it. Somewhere I can access it when I'm ready." Aunt Shu smiled, and in that smile, Mei Lin saw decades of wisdom and quiet rebellion. "I know exactly the place. But first, we need to handle your husband." On the morning of the third day, everything changed. Mei Lin awoke to shouting outside the farmhouse, voices she didn't recognize mixing with Chen Wei's angry protests. She pulled herself up, one hand supporting her belly, and peered through the cracked window. 3 men in official-looking uniforms stood in the courtyard, holding documents that made Chen Wei's face cycle through red, white, and gray. "What's happening?" she asked Aunt Shu, who had just entered with a knowing smile. "Your husband's gambling debts have finally caught up with him," the old woman replied calmly. "It seems he borrowed money from some very dangerous people in the city, using this farm as collateral. When he couldn't pay, they sold the debt to a collection agency. Those men are here to seize the property." Mei Lin's heart should have been pounding with fear. Instead, she felt a strange calm. "The treasures. Safe," Aunt Shu assured her. "Hidden where no one will ever find them, in a place that belongs to you and you alone. I have a cousin in the city, a lawyer who handles estate matters. He's already working on ensuring your rights. But if they take the farm, they take a worthless piece of land from a worthless man," Aunt Shu interrupted gently. "You, child, were never tied to this property. Your marriage contract, which I witnessed all those months ago, specifically excluded you from his debts, a clause his father insisted upon, wise man that he was. Chen Wei cannot touch you, cannot sell you, cannot drag you down with him." She paused, her weathered face glowing with satisfaction. "His family's lawyer sent a message this morning. You are free." The word struck Mei Lin like a physical blow, but not a harmful one. This blow broke chains. This blow shattered walls. This blow set her free. She watched through the window as Chen Wei argued, blustered, and eventually crumbled before the inevitable. The men in uniforms were polite but immovable. He would have 30 days to vacate the property. Everything of value would be seized. His gambling contacts had already abandoned him, unwilling to invest further in a losing proposition. In one morning, the man who had terrorized her for months became a pathetic figure, powerless and alone. When he finally slouched into the house, Chen Wei looked at Mei Lin with an expression she had never seen before, desperation combined with a sickening attempt at charm. "Mei Lin, my wife, we need to work together now. I made some mistakes, but we can start over. Your embroidery skills, Mai. I'm not your wife anymore, Mei Lin said quietly, and the calm in her voice surprised even her. Not in any way that matters. You lost that right when you threatened to sell our child. When you forced me to work like an animal while you drank in the shade. When you chose cards over family. Chen Wei's face twisted with familiar rage, but for the first time, Mei Lin didn't flinch. She saw him clearly now, not as a monster, but as a small, weak man who had used her fear as his only source of power. That fear was gone. You have nothing, he spat. You'll be begging on the streets by. Actually, Aunt Shu interrupted, stepping forward with a document in her wrinkled hands, she has quite a lot. This is a preliminary assessment from the Provincial Cultural Authority. It seems that during an archaeological survey of the property, conducted legally under preservation laws, several items of significant historical value were discovered. As you are no longer the property owner, and as these items were found by your wife during her lawful residence, they belong entirely to her. She handed Chen Wei the document. Mei Lin watched the color drain from his face as he read the figures listed there. The medallion alone was estimated at a value that could buy 100 farms. The full collection, pending authentication, could establish a museum. For a long moment, Chen Wei stood frozen. Then his legs buckled, and he sat heavily on the wooden floor, staring at nothing. The woman he had abused, starved, and threatened was now wealthier than anyone in the province. And he had driven her away with his own cruelty. You should have loved me, Mei Lin said softly, moving toward the door with Aunt Shu's support. That's all I ever wanted, Chen Wei. Just to be loved. She didn't wait for his response. Some words come too late to matter. The following months unfolded like a dream Mei Lin had never dared to dream. The Provincial Cultural Authority authenticated the treasures with breathless excitement. Scholars from across the country came to study the Empress's journal, which revealed intimate details of court life that rewrote portions of historical record. The government offered Mei Lin a substantial finder's fee plus ongoing royalties for the display of the items, ensuring that her financial security was not a one-time event but a perpetual stream. But money, Mei Lin discovered, was the least valuable thing she had gained. She gave birth to her daughter on a warm September morning in a clean hospital bed, surrounded by competent doctors and gentle nurses. The baby emerged wailing and healthy, with 10 perfect fingers, 10 perfect toes, and dark eyes that seemed to carry the wisdom of ancient empresses. Mei Lin named her Li Ming, beautiful light, and wept tears that had nothing to do with sadness. Aunt Shu stood beside the bed, cradling the newborn with practiced ease. She looks like your mother, the old woman observed. The same stubborn chin. Mei Lin laughed, and the sound surprised her. She had almost forgotten she knew how to laugh. News of her fortune spread quickly, as such news always does, and with it came unexpected visitors. Chen Wei attempted to return, pleading and promising reform, but Mei Lin's new lawyer, a sharp woman who specialized in protecting vulnerable clients, ensured he could never come within 100 meters of her or Li Ming. He eventually drifted away to another province, another set of gambling debts, another ruined life that had nothing to do with her. More welcome visitors came too. A young historian named Huang Wei arrived to study the Empress's journal and stayed to help Mei Lin establish a foundation for abused women in the province. He had kind eyes, a quiet manner, and a habit of bringing Mei Lin tea without being asked. At first, she flinched from his attentions, expecting manipulation behind every kindness. But as months passed, she began to recognize something genuine in his gentle persistence. I don't need saving, she told him one evening, as they watched Li Ming sleep in her carved wooden cradle. I know, Huang Wei replied softly. You already saved yourself. I'm just hoping you might let me walk beside you while you keep saving others. Mei Lin looked at this man who asked for nothing, promised nothing, and yet offered everything in the simple sincerity of his presence. She thought about the difference between love and possession, between partnership and ownership. Chen Wei had claimed to love her, but his love had been a cage. Huang Wei's affection asked no more than she chose to give. "Walk with me, then," she said finally. "But know that I will never again be anyone's property." "I wouldn't want you to be," he smiled, and in his smile, she saw a future that looked nothing like her past. 3 years later, Mei Lin stood at the entrance of the Empress Legacy Foundation, watching a group of women enter for their weekly support meeting. These were women like her, survivors of cruel marriages, of grinding poverty, of systems that valued them less than livestock. The foundation provided legal aid, job training, childcare, and most importantly, community. No woman who walked through these doors would ever be as alone as Mei Lin had been on that scorching day in the field. Li Ming toddled between the chairs, her laughter filling the room like music. She had her father's eyes but her mother's spirit, curious, resilient, unbreakable. She would never know hunger, never know fear, never know the special horror of being trapped with someone who was supposed to love her. Mei Lin had ensured that before ensuring anything else. Huang Wei appeared beside her, holding 2 cups of tea, his presence as reliable as sunrise. They had married the previous spring in a small ceremony attended only by Aunt Shu, a few close friends, and Li Ming as an enthusiastic flower girl. It was nothing like Mei Lin's first wedding. It was everything her first wedding should have been. "The renovation plans came through," Huang Wei said, handing her a cup. "The East Wing can become the education center by autumn." Mei Lin nodded, already planning curriculum in her head. The foundation had started as a shelter but was growing into something larger, a place where women didn't just escape bad situations but built good ones. Skills training, financial literacy, entrepreneurship support. Each woman who graduated became a mentor for the next, creating a chain of strength that stretched forward into generations. "Do you ever think about it?" Huang Wei asked quietly. "The field, the heat, that day?" Mei Lin watched Li Ming present a wildflower to one of the arriving women, who accepted it with tears and smiles. "Every day," she admitted. "But not like I used to. Now when I think about it, I don't feel the heat or the hunger. I feel the moment my shovel hit gold." She turned to face her husband, this kind man who had never once raised his voice to her, who dried dishes and changed diapers and told terrible jokes that somehow always made her smile. "I was looking for something that day, even if I didn't know it. I thought I was digging in dirt, but really, I was digging toward freedom. Every terrible moment, every awful day, it was all leading somewhere. To Li Ming. To you. To this." She gestured at the room full of healing women. "To all of them." Huang Wei took her hand, his touch gentle and warm. The empress who hid those treasures could never have imagined what they would become. Security for one woman, hope for thousands. "Maybe she did imagine it," Mei Lin replied thoughtfully. "Maybe when she wrapped those items in silk and buried them in the earth, she knew that someday, the right person would find them. Not someone who would hoard the wealth, but someone who would share it. Someone who understood what it meant to have nothing." She smiled, watching Li Ming spin in circles until she collapsed, giggling, into a pile of cushions. "She just had to wait 100 years for me to pick up a shovel." That evening, as the sun set over the foundation and the day's visitors departed toward their new lives, Mei Lin walked the grounds with Li Ming on her hip and Huang Wei by her side. The building had been a factory once, abandoned and decrepit. Now flowers bloomed in window boxes, a playground spread across the courtyard, and a vegetable garden, worked by residents who found peace in the growing of things, provided fresh produce for the community kitchen. "Mama," Li Ming said sleepily, her head drooping against Mei Lin's shoulder, "tell me the treasure story." Mei Lin smiled. This had become her daughter's favorite bedtime tale, though the telling changed each time. Once upon a time, a young mother was very tired and very sad. Bad things had happened to her, and she thought maybe good things never would again. But she kept working, kept hoping, kept putting one foot in front of the other even when her feet were sore and her heart was heavy. And then she found the gold, Li Ming prompted, her eyes already closing. And then she found the gold, Mei Lin agreed softly. But you know what, little light? The gold wasn't the treasure. Not really. The treasure was discovering that she was stronger than she ever knew. The treasure was finding people who loved her for herself, not for what she could give them. The treasure was learning that every broken thing can be remade into something beautiful. She kissed her daughter's forehead. The treasure was you. Li Ming's breathing evened into sleep, and Huang Wei silently took her weight, carrying her toward the family quarters adjoining the foundation. Mei Lin lingered in the courtyard, face tilted toward the stars that were just beginning to appear. She thought about the desperate woman she had been 3 years ago, exhausted, abused, certain that her life would end in tragedy. That woman could never have imagined standing here, wealthy in every way that mattered, surrounded by love and purpose and hope. If she could speak to that past self, what would she say? Keep digging, she decided. Even when your hands bleed and your back aches and everything seems hopeless. Keep digging. Because sometimes the thing that looks like punishment is actually preparation. Sometimes the field they force you to plow becomes the ground where your freedom is buried. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to keep going, you strike gold. A shooting star crossed the sky, brief and brilliant. Mei Lin made a wish, not for herself, but for every woman still trapped in her own scorching field, still waiting to discover her own treasure. May they find it soon, she prayed. May they find it before they stop believing it's there. Then she turned and walked inside, toward her sleeping daughter and her gentle husband and the life she had built from nothing but stubbornness, hope, and a rusty shovel that had struck something golden on the worst day of her life. The treasure had always been there, waiting beneath the surface. She had simply needed to dig deep enough to find it. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of your own strength, or inspired you to keep going through difficult times, please hit like and subscribe for more life-changing stories. Every like helps us share these messages of hope with someone who might need them today.